Welcome into the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show. I'm Alfredo Brown. Joined as always, I got Dave Kluge, and we're taking a look at the Week 11 starts and streamers. And I know it's kind of on repeat right now, Dave, but there are people that need advice, and they are looking to get some players into their lineup. There's a lot of very consequential bye weeks this week, and there's so many teams, and we're going to keep talking about this over the next few weeks. There are so many teams that are just on the precipice of either making it to the playoffs or not, and every single win is going to matter over the next few weeks.
I'm proud of myself because I'm not talking about Kluge today. I mean, I am right now.
Good on you.
I just very much so did the thing that I said I wasn't going to do, but
it's a Schrodinger's cat. Like if you talk about Kluge, you've talked about Kluge. So don't talk about not talking. Yeah.
The only reason I'm not mentioning Khalil Shakir today is because I think that he has moved into must start territory. I'm not talking about him as my must start because I think that just goes without saying. So yeah, not officially listing Khalil Shakir as a must start, but Khalil Shakir must start this week.
If you have to talk about someone being a must start, are they a must start?
It seems so because we get nonstop questions like, should I start Khalil Shakir? No, you should not start. But yeah, we get these Khalil Shakir or X questions all the time. And I'm not going to talk about Khalil Shakir today. Just it goes without saying going forward, get Khalil Shakir in your lineup. We'll talk about some deeper names today as we are getting to that point in the season where injuries and bye weeks are here. And I know a lot of people are stressing. I'm reaching deep down the lineup in some of my leagues this week.
All right, well, enough teasing, you guys. We're going to get into it. But before we do, I just want to remind everybody, you got a bunch of ways you can enjoy the show. The first is on YouTube. So if you're watching this episode on YouTube, please take a second to like this video, comment with your start sit questions down below. We'll get back to you. And of course, make sure you're subscribed to the channel because we're giving you episodes pretty much every single day of the week throughout this season. And you got the Sunday morning live start sit with Joey Wright, Jagger May, Jeff Bell, and the full Football Guys cast of characters. And then also we're on Apple Podcast, Spotify, where you're going to be getting some bonus episodes on there throughout the week on Tuesdays and Fridays. Dave, let us jump into the Week 11 starts and streamers. Kick us off with your first guy.
First guy I want to talk about is Alexander Mattison, and this is a guy that I've also talked about on this show a little bit. Got a nice matchup this week, though, going up against Miami. They're 11th in points allowed to running backs, and last week was disappointing for anybody who trotted out Alexander Mattison, but the Raiders were down big early, and they just had to completely abandon the run, leaning heavier on Amir Abdullah than we've seen in the past. We also saw Zamir White was able to plunge in for that touchdown, so I think a lot of people are looking now saying like, ooh, Alexander Mattison, he was outsnapped by Amir Abdullah. He lost the goal line work to Zamir White, and those are reasonable concerns. But even with Alexander Mattison falling behind Amir Abdullah in snaps, he still was the touch leader out of the backfield. And this was just a weird game script where they were down multiple scores going into halftime. So I think he is still the lead back in this offense, and some people are going to get a little scared off. But I've got Alexander Mattison not super high in my rankings, but I said we're going to go a little bit deeper today. We've been talking about a lot of the same names over and over, so I'm trying to stress this a little bit and get a little bit deeper into our rankings. He's my running back 29 on the week, so I've got him ahead of guys like Rico Dowdle, Austin Eckler, Jalen Warren, Tyler Algier. Not a must start by any means. If you've got somebody that you feel confident in as your RB2, you can go that way instead. But Alexander Mattison available in some leagues in waivers, in your shallow leagues, somebody that you can go out and trade for probably close to nothing. And if you're in a position where you are struggling to find somebody to put in your RB2 or flex spot, I think the upside is still there with Alexander Mattison, even though we didn't see the production last week.
So my question with Alexander Mattison is the Raiders have now switched over to Scott Turner as their offensive coordinator with Luke Getsy out. I know that we always say it can't get any worse, and then it gets worse. Do you worry that it could get worse? Do you think there's some sort of three-headed monster there with Zamir White, Mattison, Abdullah? Maybe they try to work in a young guy like Dylan Laube as the season goes on. Does that bother you at all or worry you?
Potentially. I don't think we know enough about his tendencies to know how he's going to split this up. But what we do know is that Luke Getsy, dating back to his time in Green Bay, whether it was in Green Bay, Chicago, or Las Vegas, he has always deployed a committee type of approach. So there's potential that with a new play caller, we actually see Alexander Mattison out of a committee and more of a lead back role. So I know there's a lot of trepidation because of what we've seen over the last few weeks here. But I think anytime Luke Getsy is removed from the equation, that is in addition by subtraction, I don't think that things are going to get worse now that they fired Luke Getsy.
I'm looking at it right now, and back when Scott Turner was the offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders, it was the Antonio Gibson show. That
Mhm.
was a 1,000 yard season, 7 touchdowns for Gibby, and 50 plus targets. So, I mean, it's not exciting to say that Alexander Mattison is the starting running back for the Raiders, or that you're starting him in your lineup, but I guess this looks like it should be a good move for the Raiders going forward.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't want to say it can't get any worse, but Getsy has just been
Mm,
terrible, man. Like the
mm.
fact that he got a job, I do think it's kind of funny that two offensive coordinators have been fired so far this season, and it is Shane Waldron and Luke Getsy, the two offensive coordinators hired by Chicago Bears Ryan Poles. I mean, that guy, he knows how to pick them, huh?
Go Bears. Go Bears. Matt Eberflus, how much longer do you think he's got?
Um,
In the Bears, not in life.
At
Just wanted
least
to
at least
confirm.
through the season. I mean, as long as the Chicago Bears have been around, dating back to like the early 1900s, they have never once fired a coach in season. And I mean, I tweeted this out recently. There was the Dave Wanstead years and the Dick Duran years and the Matt Nagy years where they were much much worse than they currently are, and those coaches still got to finish out the year. I think it's just the way that the Bears operate. They don't want to make a head coach change midseason. Um, would not be surprised one bit if the Bears continue on the trajectory that they are, that the day the season is over, that Black Monday, we get news that Eberflus is canned, but we have wish casted so many midseason firings in Chicago, and it just never happens.
Yeah. Yeah. The vibes are weird around Chicago. I think that's a team I don't know if I want to buy into them right now, just because I feel like the floor can't get any lower in Chicago, or can it, Dave?
I don't think so. I mean, back-to-back games without a touchdown, putting 3 points up on the Patriots. I don't think it can get much worse than that. There's been a
Like if
lot of shade thrown at Shane Waldron, which is exactly what we saw from the Seattle players when he left there last year. So maybe this could make a difference. But I need to see some semblance of life from the Chicago offense before I'm willing to buy back in at all.
DJ Moore, you buying if the price is low enough, or just staying away?
No. DJ
Oh,
Moore has put such a bad taste in my mouth this year. Even like I was talking about it way before the notorious play where he walked off the field in the middle of a scramble drill. Even before that, though, his body language has just been terrible. This is a guy who, in the offseason, made it very, very publicly known that he was upset about Justin Fields getting traded away. And it's frustrating to see. DJ Moore has always been the quiet, humble guy that you don't typically see from a superstar wide receiver. And this year, it has just been a very, very different DJ Moore. So this week, I think I've got him outside of my top 36. And I mean, it's terrible. We talked about it on Tuesday's show, the audio only version that we did. We talked about the Chicago Bears pass catchers. All these guys are per game outside of the top 40. And I mean, it's just been bad so far. Can't ignore the talent, but yeah, I think DJ Moore. This is a start show, but if we were doing a sit show, DJ Moore would be on that list for me.
All right, I'm going to give you my first start of the week here, and I'm going to the wide receiver on a team that I talked about them on Monday that I didn't realize that they were this good, and I'm actually really liking the trajectory that they are on, and it's Lad McConkey with the Los Angeles Chargers. And last week was kind of a weird week for the Chargers passing game. Like, even though they won, Will Disley led the team in receptions and had over 40% of the first read targets. Like, it
Third
was
best
just
on the week of all pass catchers.
yeah, it just didn't make sense. It wasn't really a normal thing for them. But Lad McConkey so far has been coming along really nicely, and the good thing is that he has stayed healthy. Knock on wood. I probably shouldn't have even said that, but right now, fifth most receiving yards against man coverage. The Bengals fifth highest open target rate in the NFL, and what they do is they allow just 7.5 yards per attempt on those targets. So basically, what ends up happening is that they're allowing slot players and players that are running underneath routes to get open all the time on in breaking routes. They're basically saying, sure, take the stuff that's underneath. We want to cover deep and make sure that we're not allowing the big plays. And this is a fun stat from Next Gen Stats on NFL Pro. Justin Herbert has targeted in breaking routes on a career high 32.4% of his pass attempts in 2024. The Bengals have allowed the second most receptions and the eighth most yards to in breaking routes this season. This really just kind of lends right to Lad McConkey's skill set of being one of those guys that can win over the middle and win underneath. He can do everything else as well. But you take a look at the players that have done well against the Bengals, and it's a lot of these guys that move around the formations a bunch and play in the slot. Zay Flowers, Jacoby Myers, Devontae Smith, Elijah Moore, Wan'Dale Robinson, Rashee Rice. These are all guys that have had big games against the Bengals. They've allowed 11 wide receivers to score double-digit points over the last 7 games. It would not surprise me if Lad McConkey goes out there and gives you another 13 or 15 point fantasy game.
Yeah, the floor has certainly been there, and it's so frustrating that like every single week, like Lad McConkey is doing the honest thing and the good thing and commanding the targets, and then Quentin Johnson is the one that gets the blown coverage 70-yard touchdown and outscores him in fantasy. It's been frustrating, but such a overused mantra in fantasy football. But we want to follow the usage, knowing that the production will come. And I think people chasing after the touchdowns, which are going Quentin Johnson's way, it's only a matter of time before they're just burned on any given week, and he has 3 catches for 18 yards and no touchdowns. Lad McConkey, it's going to start trending in the right direction for him. He's the clear wide receiver one on this team. He's going to continue getting usage, and he does have the athleticism to rip off big plays as we have seen. So, Lad McConkey, looking right now. I'm on running backs. That's why I can't find him, but he is inside my top 36. He's my wide receiver 32 on the week.
That's you know what? That's smart. Let me see. Where do I have him? Yeah, Lad McConkey is my wide receiver 31 in the week. So
Look at
right
us.
there, right there with you. Look at us. Who'd have thunk? Who'd have thunk? By the way, I tweeted this out. Or what is it on Blue Sky?
Skeeted.
I
You skeeted it out. That's it. Tweets and skeets.
So yesterday I posted on Blue Sky and Twitter, Justin Herbert is plus 5,000 to win NFL MVP. I know it's not that likely, but I'd throw a couple of bucks on that. Right now, 12 total touchdowns, 1 interception, 6-3 record. They're 5th in the AFC. Chargers are kind of frisky right now. I kind of like them. And they have a semi-winnable schedule over the next few weeks. Like there's one game out of third place in the AFC. Like they're surprisingly really good. And Justin Herbert's passing the ball a bit more.
I don't
All
think
right.
we've had one show this week where one of us hasn't referred to the Chargers as frisky.
Huh.
Just a note. We've said
Huh.
Chargers are frisky a lot. Did you see the clip going around of Harbaugh and Herbert when they were drawing up that rushing touchdown during a timeout? Please tell me you saw this, Alfredo.
I have not seen it. No.
It is amazing. So they call a timeout when they're at like the 5-yard line, and they go over to the sideline, and Jim Harbaugh immediately goes, "We're going to have you run it in, but let's sit over here and pretend like we're drawing up a play." And Herbert just nods along, and he's like, "Pretend like you're throwing a pass." So like Herbert drops back and then like
Oh,
points over
watch
this way.
it.
And he's like, "Pretend like you're going the other way." And then he points the other way. And they're acting like they're drawing up a passing play, knowing from the jump, from the first second the play, like he goes over to the sideline. He says you're running the ball, but man, Harbaugh, it's good. I forget who. I think it might have been Robert Mays with the Athletics. Somebody tweeted the other day, and they said like the weirdness of Jim Harbaugh is bringing out the weirdness in Justin Herbert, and it is just a
Yes.
match made in heaven.
His freak matches his freak. Like that's
Yep.
exactly what it is. Jim Harbaugh is so like I think what makes them so perfect is Jim Harbaugh is basically a high school coach
Hmm.
that has like all the NFL qualifications. And then Justin Herbert is a star high school quarterback that has all the NFL qualifications. Like he's just quiet, does what he's told, and they just work so well together. Their freak truly matches the
They're
other one.
starting to match up. You remember early in the season when like before week one, Jim Harbaugh starts like punching Herbert in the chest, and like Herbert was just
Yeah.
like confused and starts like
No,
walking backwards, like what is going on here? And then you see it happen again before this game, and Herbert is just like totally in it. They tell each other they love each other before they go out to play. I mean, it's working, dude. It took a few weeks. It was a rough start to the season, but now we see Greg Roman, leaning towards a pass heavier attack. We see Jim Harbaugh kind of getting more comfortable there. I talked about it in the offseason, man. Like so many people were ripping on the Chargers for the decisions that they were making, but I think they've got a good infrastructure here. I think that really beefing up the offensive line the way that they did has helped tremendously with the run game and the pass game. We're seeing it start to come together right now. The Chargers are a fun team.
yeah, they're frisky, as some people might say. All right, let's go to the next start of the week. Dave, hit us with your second start.
So I think a lot of people might automatically be starting Tank Dell and not thinking twice about it. This is more of a me moment. I was very harsh on Tank Dell to start this season because he frankly didn't look like himself. I mean, the injuries were there. He was struggling to separate. It seemed like the timing that he and CJ Stroud had that worked so well together last year was just off, where we consistently saw Tank Dell getting open and CJ Stroud overthrowing him. Now I think that had to do something with the speed and the burst not being there. And we saw that last year with Tony Pollard. We're seeing that this year with Mark Andrews. When you come back from this fracture and this surgery that Tank Dell had to deal with, it does take some of your explosiveness away. What I've seen over the last few weeks is that explosiveness seems back for Tank Dell. And now we have Nico Collins coming back into the fold as well. Stephon Diggs is out of the picture with a season-ending injury. It's really easy to imagine now that Nico Collins is back and healthy and Tank Dell is back to his healthy self that we see this Houston passing attack go back to what it was last year when both of these guys were giving us top 12 production. And they've got a great matchup this week against Dallas where they're going to be able to easily throw the ball against him. It is a very plus matchup. So Tank Dell is a guy that I have been I was talking about as a sell candidate early in the season, and I was talking about benching him in some of these matchups early in the season, but I do like what I've seen recently. The offensive line is obviously a big concern for the Texans, and that lack of protection has made it tough for CJ Stroud. But I'm just hopeful that with his two top receivers back, he can go back to the CJ Stroud we saw last year. So this week, Tank Dell is inside my top 30. I've got him ahead of Jackson Smith and Jigba. I've got him ahead of Jamison Williams and Alfredo, as I so often like to do. I do have him ranked ahead of Lad McConkey as well. For me, again, I think a lot of people who have Tank Dell have just been starting him week in and week out. But this is the first week that I'm a little bit more bullish on Tank Dell and ahead of consensus in my rankings.
Tank Dell is my wide receiver 29 this week, and he might continue to move up. So yeah, I've got him ahead of Lad McConkey as well. I think this ends up being a get right game for the Houston Texans.
Yeah.
And specifically CJ Stroud.
They need
And
it desperately.
And it's not, it's one of those times where it's like their slide is coming at the exact same time as their opponent's slide.
Mhm.
And if there's a team that is avalanching downhill faster than the Texans, it's the Cowboys. Like the vibes are just atrocious. The biggest talking point about the Cowboys over the past week has not even been that they don't have a starting quarterback. It's been about the sun, the
I
thing
know.
that has always existed and has never been a part of the Cowboys franchise. And that's where we're at. That's what matters most to them. And looking at it, Dave, the matchup right now, the Cowboys, they've allowed the most yards per attempt and the most expected points per attempt per drop back. Fifth highest success rate to quarterbacks in the intermediate passes this season. That's where CJ Stroud loves throwing the ball, especially to Tank Dell. So I see this as not only just a good matchup for CJ Stroud, but the Texans just to get back on track. Not that they're playing poorly, 6-4, but this is a team that I think they expected to be playing a little bit better. And I think once Nico Collins gets back, I think we're just going to see that trajectory start to go even higher.
Guess who I've got ahead of Lad McConkey and Tank Dell in my Week 11 rankings?
Oh boy, who's that?
Khalil Shakir. So
You
just
do.
needed to sneak it in there. You're starting
you
Khalil
do.
Shakir this week.
Yeah, you do. I don't know why I gave you a Mickey Mouse voice there. Like I didn't give you like I reciprocated for some reason. That's my fake excitement voice. All right, I'm going to give you my next player that I am starting this week, and I talked about him on the waiver wire show. It's Dawson Knox, tight end for the Buffalo Bills, and all this has to do with whether or not Dalton Kincaid is going to be playing, and he has not practiced yet this week. We are recording this on Thursday morning, so we'll find out if he does end up getting even a limited session in this week. But it's not just him. Amari Cooper's been limited for 2 weeks, and we still don't know if he's going to play. There's no Keon Coleman, and Dalton Kincaid being off the field really just thrusts Dawson Knox into such a big role in this offense that does not have its top pass catchers there. And yeah, he was already getting a 21% target share, and that was with splitting some time with Dawson Knox. Now, if Knox goes into that role and a potentially even bigger role in a moment where he is going to be needed, these games are so big, and it honestly brings out the best. When we have the Bills versus Chiefs, these moments bring out the best in each of these quarterbacks, Dave. Like, I don't remember the last time we've seen, maybe I'm misremembering. Have we had a moment between these two teams where we're just like, well, that was a 9-12 barn burner. Like nobody really scored. Like it is always a
It's going to be a fun
phenomenal
one.
game. Yeah, man. I'm so excited. I'm actually surprised that it didn't get, I mean, not that necessarily, I don't know if it could. I'm surprised it didn't get flexed to a more primetime matchup, like a
It
Sunday
is
night or
weird.
something.
Yeah.
Like it's 4:25 p.m. Eastern on a Sunday. Just kind of random. But
Yeah.
Dawson Knox for me,
This
he
is one of the
becomes
few where I probably won't be watching Red Zone on Sunday. I'll probably just be
no,
watching that game, and then I'll go back and rewatch the rest because
yeah.
there's not a single game during that slate that comes close to the Kansas City Buffalo matchup.
No, and it's going to be so much fun. And for Dawson Knox in particular, the Chiefs are allowing the most receiving yards per game to tight ends and the second most fantasy points allowed to tight ends. So if Dawson Knox ends up being the guy this week with Dalton Kincaid out, he's already got great touchdown upside. And he's always kind of had that, even in his like 9 touchdown season that he had a few years ago. But I think the reception upside just really gives him a good floor going into this week.
I lied, Alfredo. There's actually 3 good games during that slate. Falcons and Broncos is gonna be a good one, and then Seahawks and 49ers. I might just have to triple screen it, one on each TV and then one on the laptop. I might just be watching all 3 of those games because those are gonna be 3 fun ones. But I'm with it, man, with Dawson Knox, and like you said, it is Thursday morning, so we don't know for sure what to expect. He could practice today, but it certainly doesn't seem like it. Every injury analyst that I have paid attention to says that there's a ligament sprain and that he could miss this week and potentially even more beyond this week. So yeah, fire up your Dawson Knox. Especially, do we have word on Amari Cooper yet? He's missed last week with a wrist injury. Do we know
It's
if he's
just
playing? Even if he
he's been
does, there's been no impact from Amari Cooper besides the touchdown that he caught in his first game.
he's been limited. And that's
Yeah.
the thing is like he keeps practicing in a limited fashion, but that's it. There hasn't been any progress where we've gotten full participation or things are trending upward or looking positive for Sunday. We haven't gotten that yet. So that just leads me to believe like we're going to get a heavy dose of Khalil Shakir, Dawson Knox,
Mhm.
James Cook, Ray Davis, all of these guys. Maybe even some Curtis Samuel if you're feeling frisky. Speaking of feeling frisky, Dave, these last 2 players that we have as our starts of the week really, really fit that category.
Yeah, I'm just going right back to the well, man. I think a lot of people know where I'm going with this one. My final start of the week is Taysom Hill going up against Cleveland. Kendre Miller is still on IR. Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed still on IR. Jamal Williams isn't practicing this week. Again, as of Thursday morning, he didn't practice yesterday and Wednesday, but it doesn't look like he's going to be trending up as well. And last week, I know, I talked about Taysom Hill as a guy that you can plug in your lineup, and a lot of people are going to see the production and be upset by it. But we saw exactly what we wanted. He got targets, he got carries. He is going to line up as a wildcat quarterback and potentially drop back and complete a pass. But the biggest thing is a lot of people looking at the box score don't see that he had an 88-yard touchdown called back on a penalty last week. I mean, we were this close from getting a 20 burger from a streaming tight end, and it didn't happen. But man, I just think as long as Jamal Williams is out, as long as Kendre Miller, Chris Olave, and Rashid Shaheed are out, which could be this week, could be the next month, we don't really know for sure. I think you just keep plugging Taysom Hill in, and talking about him as a tight end streamer, of course, but with the usage that we've seen without anybody else healthy on this offense, he's more than a tight end streamer. In a lot of these leagues where I'm loaded up with handcuff running backs, I'm going to Taysom Hill in my flex spot over the Braylon Allens and the Zach Charbonnets and these RB2s on good offenses. That's what Taysom Hill is. He's an RB2 on a decent offense, but he also catches passes and he gets goal line work and he can rip off big plays and he can complete passes. So, it's crazy, but he is my tight end 4 on the week. And when you start
Ugh,
looking at my flex rankings, he is ahead of a lot of big names.
what?
Yeah.
Tight end 4.
Yeah. I mean, Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Brock Bowers. Those are the only guys that I have ahead of Taysom Hill this week.
You beautiful bastard. You beautiful bastard. Taysom Hill at tight end 4. I'm not quite there. I have Taysom Hill right now at tight end 12. And I think that's kind of like where I'm going to keep him every single week. I know we got the 88-yard, play called back, but there's just one, it's a bad Saints offense. Like we don't even know what Saints team we're going to get week in and week out. And the Browns defense, despite the team not being very good, the Browns defense has been pretty good. So, I mean, it's one of those things. Like if you have Taysom Hill, you're probably just starting him anyways because there's no other reason for you to roster him unless you need someone to play tight end for you. So yeah, I mean, back to the Taysom Hill. Well, if he ends up as tight end 4 or higher this week, yeah,
I just
you're the oracle.
we do the Fantasy Pros expert consensus ranking contest. There's over 200 people that submit draft rankings. I just checked just for the heck of it to see who had Taysom Hill ranked the highest this year. There are 2 people that had Taysom Hill ranked higher than me, and I thought I was crazy putting him at tight end 9, but we've got 2 other gentlemen out here having it as the draft, the preseason draft rankings, tight end
Mhm.
6 and tight end 8, making. I thought I was the Taysom Hill guy, but shout out to Matt Gaines and Bradley Kilgore here, who are holding the flame even higher than I am.
This is a weird hill to die. Oh, I said it. I said the thing. This
Mhm.
is a weird hill to die on, though.
I
But
mean, it's not
yeah.
because you see the boom weeks, and had it not been for that injury that knocked him out for a few weeks, on a per game basis, he's been doing what we'd hope so. He has the boom games, he has the quiet games, but it's translating to production right now on a per game basis. He's inside the top 12 in half PPR. I'm not fudging the numbers this time around. He is a tight end 1 in half PPR scoring this year.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, there's really not a leg to stand on in either side of this. Like, you can't really argue against Taysom Hill, and you can't really be incredibly pro Taysom Hill. Like, you're just like, he plays. That's it. That's really all you can say is he has good weeks, he has bad weeks. He's just like any other tight end that we have out there, which is
You
why
know,
I get it.
you know what we discount with Taysom Hill though is the psychological advantage you get of beating your opponent when Taysom Hill has a boom week. Like there is no worse feeling than losing a fantasy football matchup because your opponent, the guy you're playing against, put Taysom Hill in the lineup and he get put up 25 points. I mean, it's the psychological warfare aspect of fantasy football is often underplayed, and few weapons are stronger than Taysom Hill in the flex spot.
Few weapons are stronger than Taysom Hill. Cut it, clip it. All right, I'm gonna give you my last start of the week here, and I'm going back to the Chargers. Those frisky Chargers and Justin Herbert. Justin the Freak Herbert. That's what we're gonna call him from now on. Justin the Freak
The
Herbert.
beast is the
No,
nickname that we got from Harbaugh.
I know from Harbaugh. That's like every single semi-good football player over the last 20 years has
The
been called a
freaky
beast.
beast, the freaky beast. That's what we'll call him. No,
I'm going with the Freak. I like the Freak. I like Freak. Freaky Herbert. So what we've seen here is that the Chargers have been willing to pass a lot more. Pass attempts have been way up for the Chargers. Not last week. That was kind of an off week, like we said, with the Will Dissly thing. But prior to last week, the Chargers were actually averaging 32 pass attempts per game over that 5-game stretch prior to that, compared to their 26 pass attempts per game on the season. So this has been a team that I think they were still trying to figure out their identity, Dave, over the first 5 weeks. And Jim Harbaugh and oh my gosh, Greg Roman, I almost forgot his name. I think that they kind of wanted to establish the run consistently and allow themselves to be this ground and pound team and win with defense. And it's kind of like having a Ferrari parked in the garage, then just never using it, having Justin Herbert at quarterback. And I'm glad that they're actually doing that over these last few weeks. And they're starting to see the vibes are great over there. But right now it's been the Justin Herbert show. And I talk about the pass attempts, but it's actually been more about the dropbacks than anything. There have been more times where Justin Herbert is actually able to drop back and keep the ball in his hands, because the big thing, and this is what we talked about last year with Justin Herbert and this year, is that he's an underrated rusher. And his 16 rush attempts over the last 3 games has been a big improvement for him. And it's helped him so much in fantasy, where he's been a top 12 fantasy quarterback in each of those 3 games where he's been running the ball a little bit more. And he's been scoring touchdowns. Like you mentioned, Dave, they draw up the score for him near the red zone. Yeah, now they go up against the Cincinnati Bengals, who we expect a potential shootout here if the Bengals are able to keep putting up points the way they have been, but they've also allowed the 5th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. So Justin Herbert, I think this is going to be week number 4 where you can fire him up as a starting fantasy quarterback once again.
yeah, I got to shout out Jared Smoller, our friend over at Draft Sharks. He does some really, really good work. I'm a big fan of what Jared does, and he recently, just yesterday, actually put out a post showing neutral pass rate, kind of dividing what we've seen so far into 2 seasons, weeks 1 through 5 and weeks 6 through 10. There are only 2 teams that have upped their pass rate as much as the Chargers. It's been the Chargers and the Commanders have both upped their pass rate by nearly 10% from what we saw in the first half of the season and the second half of the season. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people expected. When you see Jim Harbaugh and you see Greg Roman, you think these guys are going to be your typical ground and pound, win these sloppy football games, but they are starting to let him air it out. Weeks 1 through 5, neutral pass rate for the Los Angeles Chargers was 49.1. Now they're up to 56.6, which is above league average. So really weird to see, but good on Harbaugh and Roman for adapting their penchant for play calling to adapt to their personnel. And now all of a sudden it's a really fun, frisky Chargers team.
We did it. What's the frisky
fun
counter
and frisky?
right
now? I don't know. A lot.
Fun, freaky, frisky. That's the Chargers right
the
now.
Frisky beast.
All right, let's do less of that. Let's go into our listener questions now, where first one we got here, Dave, from Catherine on this one's Twitter, I think. It doesn't matter. This question's from Catherine. Which 2 receivers should I start? Calvin Ridley, Devontae Smith, Devontae Adams, or DeAndre Hopkins? Which 2 are you picking?
Sorry, I was a little preoccupied and I didn't have time to look through all these at once. So read them again. I've got my wide receiver rankings. All right.
Devontae Smith, Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins.
Man, these guys are all bunched together, but I'm going Hopkins and Ridley here. but I mean, they're all
Wow.
so close for me. Like these guys are, all of them are ranked between wide receiver 17 and wide receiver 22. So I mean, this is a bucket of guys for me, and I prefer Hopkins because we have seen really exciting usage. And last week, the production wasn't there for Hopkins, but I'm still a believer in this game against Buffalo that they're going to be forced to throw it out. Like you said, it's always a barn burner when these two
Yeah.
face each other, and I think Hopkins is going to be the one to feast. And then Calvin Ridley, I actually haven't adjusted yet since they said Levis was going to take the starter. I touched these up yesterday morning and haven't changed them since. That does knock him down a little bit for me.
That's what I was surprised when you said Ridley, because I right now I've got Devontae Adams and DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah,
I'm going with the old guys.
I'm going with Adams. Yeah, I did just bump Calvin Ridley down a few spots. So yeah, for me, it's Adams and Hopkins.
Okay. So same page.
Ridley, I think I overcorrected on this week because I was very low on Ridley going into last week, and then he caught the 2 touchdowns, and I felt like I overcorrected by moving him back up in my Week 11 rankings. But now, as the week is starting to settle in a little bit, and I see Calvin Ridley that high in my rankings, it feels gross, and I'm going to drop him.
Calvin Ridley. It just feels gross.
Yeah,
All right, let's go to the next question here from Jake. He's asking in half PPR: Brian Robinson, Jalen Warren, Jerome Ford. Pick one at the running back spot.
that is Brian Robinson, no question. And I know there's some
Yeah,
concern because Austin Eckler has looked pretty darn good over the last few weeks without Brian Robinson, but they said he's back this morning. So if they're already saying 3 days before kickoff that he's going to be active and ready to go, there's no concern about lingering
well, they played
injuries or
tonight.
anything.
Brian Robinson plays tonight.
Oh, duh, yeah, duh, duh, duh. Still, they said that he's playing. I'm going with Brian Robinson here.
Yeah, I think they said it yesterday that they leaning heavily towards playing, and then today just they confirmed it. It's weird. I feel like everyone's just a little late on the Brian Robinson thing, and because Austin Eckler had some good weeks, there's like some weirdness surrounding. There's like a very weird cloud around him. Even for those of you who like to place your prop bets, the over under on rushing yards was 44.5 yards for Brian
Ooh.
Robinson. I was shocked at that, so I put the over on that. I would go Brian Robinson here as well.
Yeah, I'm looking. I've got him as my RB 15 on the week. I mean, ahead of some big names, ahead of David Montgomery, Josh Jacobs, James Cook, DeAndre Swift. We saw when he was healthy early in the season. I mean, he was giving us RB1 production. This whole offense looks better when Brian Robinson is there. So maybe I'm a little too bullish, but immediately putting Brian Robinson right back on that RB1, RB2 bubble.
All right, going from running backs to quarterbacks, who would you start, Jordan Love or Justin Herbert this week?
Jordan Love by a pretty
Yeah,
fair margin. Herbert is my QB 11, which inside the top 12 for the first time this season. But Jordan Love is my QB 7.
yeah, same. I got Jordan Love at QB7 and Justin Herbert at QB11. So same page there on that one. Fantasy Burner asking, oh, that's a nice name. Lots of buys this week. I need a flex. Ricky Pearsall or Audric Estime. This is PPR scoring.
I'm a little lower than consensus on both of these guys this week. It was great last week what we saw from Ricky Pearsall, but he's very clearly behind Juwan Jennings on the depth chart, and we might see that flip at some point this season, but I don't think it's going to be immediate. So I'm a little bit lower on Ricky Pearsall, and even with Estime, I know the usage was there last week. I'm glad we got a start sit question with Estime because I think so many people are wondering what they should do with Estime. I'm really struggling with where to rank him because his range of outcomes is so vast this week. He can go right back to what he saw last week and have a 85% opportunity share in this backfield. But we've also seen Sean Payton, man, he's just so hard to predict on a week in and week out basis how he's going to use these guys. So I'll go with Estime here. And I have Estime as a top 36 running back on the week. But I don't even want to put it out there, Alfredo, but like, would it shock you one bit if Estime just gets like two touches and Javonte Williams is the workhorse next week? Like, Sean Payton is a madman, and I can't stand trying to do anything. Like, Cortland Sutton is like the only reliable piece in this offense, and even he has had some down games, but the backfield, the tight ends, the wide receiver too, it's been so hard to predict in Denver.
That's the thing, man, is that Audric Estime is going to give you that more volatile matchup this week, I guess, to say, because like you could just walk out of there with 1 point, a couple of carries, like you said, but then this could also be the game where he blows up for 2 touchdowns.
Exactly.
We don't know. And I think I'd rather stick with Pearsall on this one because I know there's a
Oh,
better floor there. I'd rather go with Pearsall on this. I think there's a better floor there, and I think there is an equally high ceiling because of this matchup with the Niners and Seahawks. This one could be another one with a lot of offense, two teams that do pass the ball plenty. And I mean, Ricky Pearsall, we've seen his role grow week in and week out. So in this one, and especially since it's PPR too, estimate could be coming off the field a little bit for Javonte Williams to come in on passing downs, Jaleel McLaughlin to be coming in on passing downs. I'm going to go with Ricky Pearsall in this one.
yeah. I mean, I'm not super against it. It's just my worry with Ricky Pearsall is that he still is very much so a part-time player. 59 snaps 2 weeks ago, 64% of the snaps last week. I'd
It's
like to
growing.
see it is growing, yeah.
It only
79%
gets
in his
bigger.
first game. Somehow he had, his biggest snap share of the season was his first game, but that was in a game with no Christian McCaffrey, no Juwan Jennings, banged up Debo Samuel. So I think I like Pearsall a lot. I'm just yeah, I mean, this whole conversation we're having, like, we're not giving you a right or a wrong answer. It's a risk aversion question. How much
Right.
risk are you willing to, if you're looking for a tighter range of outcomes and a higher floor, you're probably getting that with Ricky Pearsall. But I think that Audric Estime, I know you said they have similar ceilings. I'll argue that Audric Estime's ceiling is a little bit higher because I think his ceiling is, 20 touches, 100 yards, and a couple of touchdowns. And I don't know if we can see that type of production from Pearsall. So I'm going to go with Estime here. But like I said, I'm behind consensus with both of these guys going into this week.
Yeah, same. I've got, where do you have Audric Estime amongst the running backs?
Um,
I've got him
Pulling
at
him up.
running back 29.
I've got him at running back 24.
Okay.
So behind Najee Harris, Pollard, and Dobbins, like you'd kind of expect, but ahead of Nick Chubb, Ramondre Stevenson, Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby, Alexander Mattison. So, kind of at that RB2, RB3 bubble. But like I said, it's so hard to rank him. Like part of me wants to put him inside my top 15 and say that he took over this backfield. Part of me wants to put him outside of my top 40 and say, I don't know what the hell Sean Payton is doing on a weekly
Right.
basis. It's just
Yeah.
so hard.
All right. Next one on here. Bango asking, non PPR. Who do you bench? So Achan, Gibbs, Chase Brown, Aaron Jones. You know what, man?
Flex.
What are you doing?
Flex.
What are you doing? I guess this is a legitimate question though. Who do you bench out of all these guys? Because you feel like you have to start all of them. I think like let's do the process of elimination. I think you and I both agree you have to start Achan and Gibbs,
Yep. And I have
right?
Chase
So I
Brown,
guess
and I have Chase Brown pretty well ahead of Aaron Jones this week. Chase Brown's my RB
okay,
13. Aaron Jones is my RB 20. Also, pay close attention. He was able to come back into the game with that ribs/chest injury that knocked him out early last week, but now he's limited. They said they expect him to play this week, but there's if it is a rib injury, there's a high risk of re-injury, and we saw Cam Akers look decent when he was spelling Jones with the injury last week. So we might not see the typical Aaron Jones workload if he's kind of banged up going into the matchup. That's the only reason I'm a little bit lower. And Chase Brown, man, he has just looked fantastic. I mean, it's I don't think I'll have him outside my top 15 for the rest of the year.
yeah. Chase Brown is my running back 14 on the week. Aaron Jones is my running back 19 on the week. So and I might actually drop Aaron Jones a little bit more because this matchup against Tennessee is
Yeah.
pretty tough. Um, and I especially if he's been having limited practices coming off his injury, we could see a little bit more Cam Akers, I think, than we expect. All right, next one on here. Tim is asking, this is a trade question, David. Do I trade for the Neighbors side or Evans side? I currently have Nico Collins, Malik Neighbors, DJ Moore, and Jerry Judy. So he has Neighbors. He's saying, do I trade Neighbors and Judy away for Mike Evans and T. Higgins, or just keep what he has?
I'd stick with Neighbors. Like
Okay.
pretty
To me,
pretty
like Judy's a
obviously.
loss. Like Judy's just like you're not starting him
Right.
almost ever.
And I don't know if I don't want to put it
Because the
out
thing
there,
is, then
but
you've got Nico Collins who's coming off his injury. We hope DJ Moore, who you said you're probably not starting him anymore, and then Jerry Judy. So he basically has one good receiver here, and he could turn this into Mike Evans and T Higgins. I'm not saying like I advocate for it, but I get where the question's coming from.
when is Mike Evans coming back? I mean, it's already week 11. He
It's
could
fair.
still miss another game, could miss another 4 or 5 games. We don't really know. T. Higgins, another guy who, like, when he was on the field, looked really, really good, but with no contract, I don't know for sure, but there's so much risk acquiring Mike Evans and T. Higgins. And I think if the stars align for every single player in this discussion, for Jerry Judy, Malik Neighbors, T. Higgins, Mike Evans, the stars align for all of these players, Malik Neighbors has undoubtedly the highest ceiling of the bunch. And Malik Neighbors isn't injured right now. You know what you're getting with Malik Neighbors. Um, I think Malik Neighbors is a great target to go out and try to trade for right now, if you possibly can. 36.4% target share. That is ludicrous. He is leading the league in target share by a huge margin. He's fifth in the league in target rate, third in the league in air yards. I mean, it's all been there for Malik Neighbors. Obviously, the offense isn't great, but I think the allure of the unknown, as we like to say, with Drew Lock taking over at quarterback now, you know, Daniel Jones hadn't looked good the last couple of weeks, and we've talked about Drew Lock just kind of being a, chuck the ball downfield and let his guy make a play type of quarterback. And if Malik Neighbors continues drawing a 36.5% target share with Drew Lock throwing the ball to him, we could see an explosion over the second half of the season.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I don't have a strong feeling about this one. I think I'd be comfortable staying where I'm at, mostly because I think Neighbors is the best player in this trade, and that's typically where I lean. Is you want to just have the best player in the trade, and then for the other guy that he has on his roster, DJ Moore. If let's say Neighbors cancels out Mike Evans, who's probably more of a fantasy producer than T Higgins, I think DJ Moore and T Higgins kind of cancel each other out, because if DJ Moore is able to come back, awesome. But we also don't know if T Higgins is coming back, so I agree with you on this one.
Yeah, I'm looking at an article right now where they said that T Higgins said that he's gone after this year. It sounds like he's just
Yeah,
done.
he's probably not going to play.
And that's the thing is if we knew Mike Evans was coming back in a week and he'd be healthy, and if we knew T Higgins was coming back in a week and he'd be healthy, easily prefer the Evans and Higgins side. But there's just so much risk in acquiring both of those guys. I mean, who knows what you're getting from Mike Evans when he's coming back? Second time he injured that hamstring this year, over 30 years old. That's a tough buy. And then T Higgins might just nurse this injury for the rest of the year. So you might be trading Malik Neighbors, a potential top 5 wide receiver, for two guys that you might not get much of anything from this year. So I'd stick with Neighbors.
Bueno, that's it for us. We went through all of our listener questions, our starts and sits. Good luck to everybody here in week 11. We're going to be back again on Monday together with the week 12 waiver wire, but Dave is going to be back again tomorrow on the audio side on Apple and Spotify with Jeff Bell going through the week's injuries, news, and updates for all of the week 11 matchups here. And of course, Sunday morning, we got the live start sit show with Joey Wright, Jagger May, Jeff Bell, Adam Hutchinson, the whole FBG staff. Well, for myself, for Dave, we want to thank you guys for watching and listening all the way through, and we'll see you next time. Adios.